Hello, and welcome to the Humanity, where we do the things with the stuff for the people. I am Matt.
And I'm Tommy, back from vacation. Uh, by the way, good job last week, Matt. Thoroughly
Oh,
enjoyed
thank
it.
you.
And not just because part of it included me jumping on. The rest of the just you part was good too. But yeah. So now that I'm back, I figured might as well talk some politics
Bali, bali.
and whatnot. So yeah. But speaking of which, I don't know if you saw my I got a couple souvenirs for my trip. I went to Gatlin. I was in Gatlinburg last week. I got a couple souvenirs with me tonight. First is this awesome T-shirt I got. It says a Sasquatch. It says "I hate people, Great Smoky Mountains." But just in case people can't read that part, it does say it nice and big on the back too. Just so
I hate people. Well, it's the
take
wrong
off.
place to go, really.
Well, it says the Great Smoky Mountains, where
Oh, yeah.
certain parts of the mountains, I can just go there and it's like fuck off, people.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but other souvenir happens to be what I'm drinking tonight, which is I don't know what part of Tennessee, but I figured while I was down there, I needed to get some kind of Tennessee beer. It's from Black Horse Brewery. It's their IPA because it's me. But it's interesting because for just being there, just like regular IPA, it's not like super hazy, but it definitely is hazy. But like really, really juicy. Like
Mm.
this would be like any other brewery had an IPA like this. I'd probably call it their something like juicy IPA or something like that. But yeah, tasty.
Cool. I had a beer. I had a barley wine earlier.
Ooh,
The Duck Rabbit Brewery has a barley wine, and it's citrusy hop flavor, but with like a caramely malt. And it sounds like it shouldn't work, but like it does. And it's one of my favorite barley wines for sure.
who's it by? You said
Um, Duck Rabbit.
Duck Rabbit.
They've been around for like a long, long time.
Hmm.
And their labeling looks like it's the beer from a long, long time ago, which is kind of awesome. They just never changed their labels or something.
That makes me wonder: is the Duck Rabbit, is that a reference to like that optical illusion, like
Yeah,
just that
yeah,
one
yeah.
image?
That's
Okay,
their
I was
logo because it's a an unlicensed like you don't need a license because it's a super old
Nice.
sketch. Yep.
Yeah, but my first thought was actually like from the Looney Tunes, like the whole like duck season, wabbit season
Yeah.
kind of thing. But
Okay, so what I'm having is Heyman's gin.
ooh,
It's Heyman's of London, Old Tom gin.
mm.
Old Tom is like an old style of gin, but like nobody really knows why it's called Old Tom. That's what I gathered from a little bit of research that I did.
Well, I feel like I should probably figure that out.
I don't
But
know if
now
it's the right answer. I just was like, I like that answer that nobody knows what it means. I'm done. Done searching.
now that's just making me think of Muppet Treasure Island.
Oh, I don't think I ever watched all of that. I
Oh.
just saw like snippets here and there.
I just love like some of the little side characters, like that were just like members of the crew on the ship, like they were calling roll call. It's like Old Tom, aye, like this old guy. They're all Muppets.
Yeah.
It's like, and then so we got Old Tom, aye, real Old Tom, even older one next to him, aye, dead Tom. It's just like it's like a skeleton basically with the guy holding him up going, aye. Which of course makes Kermit do his like trademark worried. Which is fantastic. But yeah.
If you haven't seen who's the host of the British guy who hosts Last Week Tonight, John Oliver?
John Oliver, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there's a few years old clip of John Oliver and Cookie Monster kind of like doing like a riffing news broadcast, and then in between shots there's like a I think it's between shots is them talking to one another, and the guy who puppets Cookie Monster and does the voice is sharp. Like it's it's a beautiful thing. It was awesome to be able to also look at something that I thought was awesome when I was little, and like it
Yeah.
still delivers,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Oh
realize
yeah.
it's always been that good.
Wow. I'd like to think so. Anyway. Yeah. So. Oh yeah, another just bit of news for myself. I'm excited about. I finally scheduled a session with a professional counselor for this Monday. So, people not sure exactly why you need counseling, Tommy. Well, maybe go back and listen to my solo episode from about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
It's like, here's a challenge for you. Why would Tommy need therapy? That's the harder question.
Or the hard, I think, even harder. Like, why wouldn't I need therapy?
Yeah.
But even if I didn't have like all the specific like goings on and things in life, that's something I've said for a while. So I think anyone could benefit from some kind of counseling or therapy.
Anyone could benefit from Tommy getting counseling.
Also true. Also very, very true. So yeah. So we'll see how this goes, because I know like I haven't really done much counseling other than like did a little premarital counseling, then a little post-marital counseling. I guess kind of like
premarital is often a joke. Like it's really hit or miss. What?
Yeah, ours. I mean, I guess at the time I thought it was really good, but maybe looking back, I wonder now. But
yeah.
But
I mean, because wouldn't you hate to be that premarital counselor guy who's like, maybe you shouldn't. I mean, like you don't get much repeat business that way. You get taken off of some counseling lists, for soon to be newlyweds.
Yeah, I can imagine. But other than that, haven't really had much. So I don't really know what to expect, or that's why even like finding a counselor was difficult. So I basically just I just looked through who was like in network on my insurance, and I just found the first one that really had any kind of like more substantial description about things they specialized in. And like, oh, that sounds helpful. And it seemed like a nice person. Read a couple of their reviews online. Like, oh, that sounds nice. So we'll see how it goes. Because another one of my issues is if it turns out to not be a good fit, my personality type is not very conducive to letting the person know that it isn't working. And then so...
Oh,
yeah.
You just gotta let that like inner monologue out in the open. Like when when your brain goes, I don't like this. just say that out loud. Like,
yeah. Well,
they love it when you say the quiet things out loud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because my current strategy is just going into basically like near the beginning of the first session, just saying that. By the way, if I feel like this isn't working, I'm going to have a hard time letting you know. So that's something else we could work on, maybe. But yeah, so I'm excited about that. It's on Monday, so I figure. I don't know what I figure.
Well, I don't either.
I figure it'll be Monday, and next week I'll maybe be able to let you know how it went. Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Well, I'm not gonna ask. So, because
okay,
because that bothers me. And somebody's like, "How'd it go?" And I'm like, "Shut up."
Yeah. I don't know.
Sure. You're like, that's why I went to counseling, because I didn't know how it was going except bad. I just asked me how did it go. It's like that's what I'm going there for.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time. Things usually aren't completely fixed yet. At least that's what I gather. But no, well,
that goes as fast as you're able.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's going too slow, and like that's not the therapist's fault. Unless they're like really bad, like really bad, and then that's kind of obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're like, oh, they don't people so well. This probably isn't the job for them. Maybe I should leave.
It's like, I'm a people. They don't me very well. But yeah. Wonder if I should talk to her like that, like the whole time. It's like, I don't do the people very well, or
It's like doing an impression of Sir Sick gets therapy.
it's like, I don't know how to words. You seem like a big brain smarter.
Do you have the best words? Please tell me them.
And all the whiskey am mine. So, so if people don't know who Sir Sick is, first of all, I'm sorry. And if you do know who he is, maybe also I'm sorry. But he's a YouTuber, Sir Sick. It's SIC. It used to stand for Social Inequality Crusader, but I noticed recently he changed it to Scientific Idiocy Crusader.
I've seen it go back and forth too. I think it's like whatever kick he's on, and
that could be.
Lately, he's been doing the science.
Yeah, yeah, he does the science. You know, he's the big athy blab and talks about such things and how God doesn't do the real and and all the whiskey.
He kind of combines meme language into a new thing.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Highly recommend.
If you're a Christian, you will be offended, but that's not his fault.
I mean, even if you're not, you might be offended by some of the things, I'm sure. But all the things he likes to do with the humans. It's very specifically the humans, not the humans.
So that's how he gets away with saying kill all the humans.
Yeah.
Humans are the worst.
They're all purpley and squiggly armed, or at least that's how they're animated.
There's another YouTuber that he has this thing he just kept saying when he learned about things in the past that were awful. Because he has several shows or channels on there where like he's reading his script for the first time for the episode on the camera, and so like the writer it's almost like a conversation between the writer of the article and him, sort of, and the audience, and then later the video editor throws in things, and so it's kind of like this multimedia conversation that's happening. It's pretty meta, but he has this little slogan for one of his channels and a t-shirt that has it, and it says the past was the worst.
What's the channel, or who's the person, or I don't think I've heard of this.
Simon Whistler. He has like 10 different channels, and his thing is kind of, his aesthetic is kind of like Discovery Channel shows before they sucked. Like in the late 90s, like mid to late 90s.
Those were the days.
Yeah. So it feels like you're watching a TV show with no commercials.
Ooh.
Yeah. Also, the Y-Files is great for like Discovery Channel kind of shows that were like a little woo-woo, but not like Ancient Aliens bullshit, you know? Like a little Goosebumps kind of angle to things. That's also good. Y-Files is also good.
Nice.
Anyway, are we avoiding the topic?
Yeah, well, I figure it's been like 2 weeks in a row of like, I don't want to say just despair, but like the topics have been, we're talking about like what end of the world ish or apocalypse or whatever, or a couple weeks ago. Then last week you're talking about like freaking out about all the everythings and how to deal with I don't know. I remember if you said this on the episode, or this was just like when you were talking to me beforehand about what you were going to be talking about. But like, what do you do? Like, it's not just the shit hitting the fan, but like the fan has become the shit or something. They just got to start throwing fans at it now or something. Oh, that was spectacular. But
yeah, I don't remember, but that sounds familiar.
It's like, that sounds like something me would say. Yeah.
No, lately it has felt like everything is broken, and the things that we thought fixed it are now making it worse. And so now what? Everybody, now what?
Yeah, like for real, please. Now what? Yeah, so I figured, so maybe why not talk about one of those specific things that are
So,
fucking
like,
up the everything, and
the old people, like, just take away their keys.
and their cell phones, and,
Did you know?
and their Fox Newses.
In the
Mm.
in the military, they have a forced retirement at 64, and that's for generals included. You
Hmm.
can get, I think, special permission from the Secretary of Defense or something to serve an additional 2 years to your 64, no, 66, and then
Hmm.
I think the final stage was you could serve for an additional 2 years only by special decree of the president, and that went for everyone. And so that you're really only going to get like generals and stuff back in
Hmm.
with that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
It's like, if only we could apply that to presidents, since they're actually in charge of the military
No,
even more than
yes.
generals are. But,
Right.
but
Because the commander in chief should have the same aging out.
right. But looks like we got friend Kiffany here. I don't know how to pronounce that or what it means, but I know this part, so I appreciate that. And I assume the rest of it isn't too antithetical to that, so
Correct.
I'll take it.
But I don't know what it is. I assume that's
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah. Speaking of presidents, they're politicians. Hey, let's talk about politics.
Hey, guess who the oldest person to run for president ever is now? It's Donald Trump.
Congratulations.
That's so
Yeah.
amusing to me. Because like his whole shtick was like, Joe's the oldest person ever run for president, and now it's just funny that like the Republicans put so many eggs in one basket, like one marketing basket,
Mm.
and they just did not anticipate maybe needing to run against Kamala, and so like
Which honestly, like
their
they really
whole message,
should have.
right? And
Yeah.
it's just stupid they didn't. But
Mhm.
if you have a guy in charge of the party who is like very like personally competitive with people, they're
Mhm.
probably doing what he wanted and making it like old guy versus older guy, and surely the younger one is better, and that kind of.
Yeah.
It's just like I watched a lot of the Republican convention.
Yeah. I didn't see any of it. I was
Via
on
people commenting. It was like reaction channels and stuff.
Mm.
And no, it was a Trump rally and an anti-Joe Biden rally. There was nothing of substance. There was no policies like
Mhm.
we're gonna do even vaguely this. It was just kind of like we're gonna end inflation. It's like, oh, okay, you're just gonna break the economy, because that's not how inflation works. There's no ending it unless like you
Yeah.
change systems completely.
Right. Or
So now they have to run on the substance, because they're gonna have to, because
Mhm.
she's gonna eat him for lunch during debates.
Oh yeah.
She was.
I may actually want to watch debates now.
She was a prosecutor. Like, one of the things that they'd
Mhm.
love to do is get somebody to say something stupid on the stand. Like,
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great thing. Like, she was a prosecutor, and he currently is a felon. So
yeah, yep. And she already has an ad out about that. It's pretty funny.
Oh, good.
She's like, she lists off some of her accomplishments from her past regarding sex offenders, and like all the things that Donald Trump has, either been civilly or criminally convicted of. And
Mhm.
and then she's like, so Donald Trump doesn't worry me. I know his type. Something like that. And I was like, oh, that's good. That's really good. I don't really like love her or anything, but like, I
Yeah.
just like that it's different now.
Yeah, like if
It
only
feels more
just
like
really-
reality now.
Yeah, and it's I at least want to see Trump have to actually engage with. I mean, no offense to Biden, he's just old, but an intelligent sounding person.
Oh no, you can lose
'Cause-
IQ points as you get older, and he probably has Parkinson's.
Mhm.
There was a
Yeah.
Parkinson's doctor who was at the White House like every month for like the past, basically since he hasn't been meeting with the cabinet since last October.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
he's like, it wasn't me. They were here. Other people were seeing him. Routinely, other people in the White House see a neurologist that we drive in who specializes in Parkinson's. It's like, that's quite a personnel problem.
Yeah. At least he didn't just like throw Jill under the bus. It's like, it was Jill. Yeah, she's. Yeah.
Oh, he would never do that. He loves the crap out of her.
Yeah. Which that's cool to see.
Yeah.
But,
I'm not saying I agree with what they do with their affection to us. But
Yep. So, but speaking of what we do think, thought maybe let's start. I mean, maybe not go too in depth into this, like at least not as much as we did with our like progressions of like our spiritual and faith backgrounds. So we thought we'd give at least somewhat of a background on our like political leanings and thinkings and meanderings and whatnot. I think for the most part, we probably this is like just like with like the whole like faith and Christianity and then the atheism thing. I think we've for the most part kind of at least similarly tracked along with each other, at least as far as I'm remembering. Like I don't know if you went like as full like anarchist as I did, but
no, but I'm going more in that direction now, but not just not. And I'll explain in a little bit.
Yeah. So I'll start like kind of giving some of my background, and you can of course like chime in, say where you were different or similar or whatever. But yeah, I grew up just like very Republican, very like conservative Christian Republican, pro-life, at least as far as one issue was concerned, very pro-life, but very pro-not life in many other issues. Extremely like not just pro-military as in like, I appreciate and support the troops for, doing what they do, but just to the point of like whatever the military does is awesome. And I'm in full support of whoever they choose to blow up. I don't care who they are kind of thing. It's like, and was that way. Oh, now here's a question. We'll get to this, I assume, but from Brittany. First, thanks for hanging out with us, Brittany. But just want to know how we feel about Bobby Kennedy. We've spoken a little bit of him about. I know she's a big fan. I honestly don't know a ton, but yeah, well, unless there's anything you wanted to tease the folks with, we can get to that once we. Yeah, we can get to that, but
we'll get to that. I have thoughts.
Well, good. I would like to hear some on him. But yeah, grew up just very, like I said, very, very Republican, like well into adulthood, probably 20s, probably mid-20s maybe. And then I think it was around, if people remember, I think it was around 2009, like when the whole Tea Party thing started being really big. Like at first I was actually like a huge fan of it, but like I was kind of starting to lean more like libertarian at that point. But I think it was actually the 2012 election between Obama and Romney. That was the last time I actually voted Republican. I did vote for Romney that year, but it was more just like I just was scared to death that Obama would get reelected because that would mean the socialism. But yeah, but I was on board with initially, at least like what I thought the Tea Party was, because like it was all about just like smaller government, lower taxes, less spending was kind of like their main three things. I was like, yeah, those are good, but I didn't know it was gonna basically turn into just like super mega roided up republicanism.
Yeah,
but it started encompassing all kinds of other issues that to me it seemed like had nothing to do with what it was originally about. But yeah, so I was very into that for a little while, but then like before too long, I was like, I think I'm more just libertarian. I don't think I was ever even fully. I mean, obviously, I don't know why I said obviously. It's not obviously. You people don't know. I never actually like registered libertarian. Like, so I was never like officially down with the party, just like I consider myself more like small L libertarian. I did vote for Gary Johnson in 2016. I think it was just the ticket of like Trump and Hillary. And I'm like, could this possibly get any worse? And boy, was I wrong. But,
reality said, "Hold my beer."
Yeah, because I was like, if there was ever a time to vote third party, this is the election.
No,
So
but
I
it
ended
kind of
up
was, because after that,
Yeah.
like third parties were definitely spoiler candidates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, which I'm still waiting on my apology from all of my Republican friends who told me that voting for Gary Johnson would mean that Hillary would win. So,
Well, that was happening because I think the polling companies that that do the polling, something was wrong with their information. I don't think they had learned how to adapt to modern life or something. But they were very wrong.
Yeah. I remember I was
they had no idea why at first.
Yeah. I remember I was traveling for work at the time. Like I'd early voted, and then like I was out of town actually on election day. So I remember I was just back in my hotel room, just like watching it and just watching the results coming in, like, because I thought Trump had just zero chance. So, but then I was like, no, it's not that I really wanted Hillary, but I just like really, really didn't want Trump. So
yeah, because at least
I was like, why does
Hillary, it'd be more of the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Trump was kind of like, what is even that?
What the hell is even that? I was just thinking like the whole night, like, why does my hotel room not have a mini bar? That was rough, but yeah. So I don't remember exactly what the trigger was that kind of, I guess, maybe start deconstructing, if you will, from Republicanism. I think it was maybe just a frustration with how, yeah, like Republicans were still like realizing, oh, Republicans still are like all about big government and big regulations, and yeah, they might talk a big game about like lowering taxes or freedoms or whatever, but I think it was also just with the whole like kind of getting jaded on the whole like our foreign policy in particular, and seeing how that was kind of devastating all of the everywhere else in the world. And
yeah,
and then just I think also ironically, because we were both at the time like really like super into Glenn Beck, and I think he started leaning more like libertarian at the time, or at least what he thought was libertarian. Like looking back, like I'm not sure he really knew what the hell he was talking about.
Yes. Okay. Weirdly, it's a really there's like a shortcut from like libertarianism to fascism, and
yeah,
and there's there's something that is like fascism adjacent in a lot of libertarian ideas, and there's different kinds of libertarianism, but yeah. So people mean different things, but for some reason, some of the scariest tech bros with billions are libertarians, and they're playing all nicey. Like JD Vance is their guy. Like,
really?
Yeah. And it's because you need a kind of authoritarianism for the tech bros to make the bigger billions. Because if tech controls all of society, or at least is involved in all of society, like completely, then society, just by continuing to exist, will make the tech bros trillions. And like, then we have like tech bro warlords. Like the rest of us suffer because they have a beef with one another, and it just all repeats again. Just kind of a feudal system. I think capitalism is the feudalism system that was repackaged and resold to us as an awesome future. And it's like, no, they just figured out how to make sharecroppers of us all.
Yeah. Oh, and I have thoughts on that as well. But capitalism, that is. But yeah, so I don't remember when exactly or how exactly, but like at some point I came across Murray Rothbard, and
Who I still need to read.
yeah, it's still like I think his book, A Libertarian Manifesto, was really good. He's got some writings on economics that are also interesting. Um, but no, it's the name of the book was For a New Liberty, and like the subheading was A Libertarian Manifesto.
Ah,
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so and he was definitely more, I think, the like not just anarchist, but like I think particularly like anarcho-capitalist branch, or at least I don't know if he necessarily claimed that, but that seems to be like a lot of the type of people who gravitate more towards him is kind of more in that camp. That was like another big thing for me, to like realizing there's just like different types of anarchists.
yeah.
Like I think
I like
gravitated.
libertarian anarchy, which is very similar to socialist anarchy. So it seems like libertarianism is a shortcut to everything.
Yeah, but because also I'd heard of like socialist anarchy, but I thought that was kind of an oxymoron. But then the more I learned about it, I was like, oh, that actually kind of does make sense.
Yeah, it's like
But
kind of like voluntary communalism.
mhm.
It's kind of
Yeah, so it's the way I've heard it described to me by someone else who considered themselves a anarcho-socialist or socialist anarchist, whatever. Like so like the principles of socialism, where like things are like held in common, and it's not just like a total like capitalist every man for himself. Like it is all about like the communal aspect, but it's without the state government like enforcing all of it, kind of thing. Which that kind of just sounds like humanism, really. But
yeah. I think there's
yeah.
a lot of humanism rolled into anarchy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because another thing I found out, like, and except for some of the more extreme versions, you know, like your Black Flag anarchists or your more like revolutionary types, it's not.
Tell me more about the Black Flag. Because what does that mean?
I don't remember. I just that's the more like, at least from what I remember, it's been a while since I really looked into it. It's more this like the actual like revolutionary, like burn it all down, like not just resist like the authority, but actually actively dismantle the like authorities. And I think at least that's if I'm wrong, someone please correct me.
Well, I
But
think the actively dismantling the violence is the last resort, and it seems like the current Black Flag anarchy people, they're so they do a lot of antagonizing counter protests to happen, and they won't do anything violent to people. They may violence to property, maybe sometimes, but they don't do violence to people first. When violence starts to be done to them, there's like different groups. There's some that will then like kind of fight back, but it's like still to provoke the other side more. And then there's I think more of them tend to be strategic, like strategically take them on, like how do we get the snake to eat itself, kind of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, so as I was when I was first kind of like researching like all the different types, I kind of found myself leaning more, or at least thought I was leaning more like anarcho-capitalist. You know, I still thought at the time capitalism was just the bee's knees. But I just started finding out more. I found anarcho-pacifism.
Yeah, I was kind of into that for a bit.
Yeah, because something I found, like I said, other than some of the more like extreme like types, like with anarchy, the way I described it, like I wasn't an anarchist because I was against rules. It's like, to me, anarchy wasn't about being against rules. It was about being against rulers. If that makes sense. Because another term I found that, like, I guess is still essentially an anarchist like position, but I found I liked better was a voluntarism. Because for me, it was just all about the idea of, I believed all human interactions should be voluntary and not state enforced. And that doesn't even necessarily mean there are no governments per se. It just means any kind of government you're under is a like voluntary, you know, interaction or like submission or whatever you want to call it. But it should be the situation where if you're under like a certain set of rules or authorities, you should be able at any point say, well, I don't agree with this anymore. I'm going to go elsewhere, not live by that anymore. So, but that was really the thing with me, that I still consider myself a bit of like an anarchist at heart, but when it comes to just like the practicality, which I know I'm like, just by saying the word practicality, like from what I remember back in the day, I'm already pissing off a lot of people in the anarchist community. They're like, oh, practicality, that's like, they'll kind of equate that with compromise. It's like, well, kind of, yeah, because the more I would be reading about things like, you know, from people like Murray Rothbard, because like that's one of the things that people often say, like the libertarians or anarchists, like, well, if you get rid of all the government and all the things that they do, what are you going to replace it with? It's like, well, first of all, like in some cases, the answer is like nothing, because the government shouldn't have been doing that anyway. But in other cases, like, so people like Rothbard, he actually laid out like a plan for a stateless society and what it would actually look like and how things would operate. And I remember even at the time, like wanting to like love his ideas, like, yeah, finally, like this is how it's going to work. But I remember even at the time reading it, and I'm like, I don't see how that would actually work. Because I mean, you can look into his writings and stuff for yourself, but it's, to me, essentially just became like whatever kind of structures would like emerge from that, you would essentially have a de facto state situation anyway, with like whoever ended up like taking over. And so it's like you would still, you'd like at first you might have like some options about who to like affiliate with, but then again, like anything else, the bigger just keep getting bigger and pushing everything else out. And
Yeah.
before you know it, you got a monopoly, which is essentially the state government anyway. And yeah. And another reason I found that I'm kind of leaning a little, at least in a practical sense, away from anarchism is because at the time, like I was still a Christian. And so it was almost, I think it was shortly after I started getting into the whole like libertarianism, anarchy thing. That's also around the time I started like heavily deconstructing, particularly going more like progressive Christianity, like just all about love. God is love, 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 everything, you know, like just with the ideas of love meaning not forcing other people to do anything. So I just saw, you know, the government as force. So it's like, well, if I'm going to, you know, follow Jesus and be all about love and not forcing people, like, well, the government's like completely antithetical to that. So I can't be for that. So it's kind of in a weird, ironic way, like my anarchism was very connected to my Christian faith at the time.
Yeah.
And so then now coming out of Christianity and like, you know, kind of reevaluating the everything, you know, I kind of recently have gotten around to more thinking about what do I think of politics now and all that. So that's because it's kind of weird, because I remember at the time when I sort of like left, or like when I considered myself just kind of leaving the whole political spectrum and just like going anarchist, like I said, like, I don't know if I can ever like go back, but I said like for if I ever do go back, one thing I know is like I'm not being a Republican again. But but I actually said at the time, like, even though I have no plans on doing this, like if I ever were to go back, I probably would be like, I don't know if I would have, probably not still officially a Democrat, but definitely more like leftist progressive. And it turns out I was kind of right, because that's where my leanings are now anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a lot.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No. No, it just made me think of other stuff that like I was remembering a lot of things that I was going through at the same time as that.
Yeah. So let's hear about the you.
Oh, well, I don't know. Let's start in high school. I was an editorial cartoonist for our school newspaper in high school. And it was like a really good school newspaper. And I did a editorial cartoon. It had some Christians in a fort made out of Bibles. and they're wearing helmets and stuff. And there's like apparently this gay student kind of like walking past their fort, and and what's the bubbles, the word bubbles or something like quick, we must thwart the oncoming homosexual before he opens our closed minds. And then another guy goes, hurry, Ed's starting to crack. And there's a guy in the corner going and that got into like a who's who of the high school press in like that year in America.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was like one of the top the top cartoons in the country, according to like this editorial board.
I didn't know about this.
Yeah, and then like shortly after, I started going out with this girl who was a one of the Churches of Christ people, because there's so many different variations.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the whole spectrum of Protestantism. Like they've got it. This is the one where they didn't do instruments or music in church. They just sang a cappella, which was actually like pretty cool sometimes. But that was shortly after I had that like very liberal cartoon. I got sucked into I don't know, that world. And then I had like a culture, and it was which was a big deal for me. But then that's about the time, a little after that, I started getting into like talk radio and like Rush Limbaugh and just stuff like that. Things that were more intellectual than the regular news, but and that there wasn't anything more intellectual than that. And so I like to know the things and apply it and all that. And I felt like they had answers. Also, it was way easier to be a Republican than a Democrat in the Christian circles. So that was kind of a nudge. My parents were Democrats until Ronald Reagan. And then I think they both voted for Jimmy Carter. And then he was a dud. He was decent guy.
Yeah, say as a president, bit of a dud, but as a person, pretty cool.
Yeah, he wasn't able to execute. He didn't really have the skill set for that kind of leadership job.
Yeah,
like when he was working at Habitat for Humanity after he retired from politics, and he was doing all that. That seemed more like his speed.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, and so I kind of grew up conservative, but more of like a moderate kind. And I think I started moving away from conservatism around the same time that I was questioning other kinds of structures you weren't supposed to question, like faith ones, and not taking someone's word for it just because they're an authority. And then I started paying attention, I think within the last year, to listening to and watching things that like I didn't agree with or didn't know if I agreed with. So I was kind of being challenged more by different ideas. And then I started to realize that from what I could tell, ideas from the left had more research to back them up as functional things. Like those ideas have outcomes closer to how we want the world to be. Whereas conservatism is like super linked with capitalism. And in capitalism, the whole idea is to pay people as little as you can and charge them as much as you can for things. Like, that only leads everyone closer to poverty.
Well, most people.
Right. Yeah. Everyone but the people whose families already have money at the top.
Basically, if you're the ones doing the paying and the charging, you're good.
It's almost impossible to move up more than one level in like income strata. like people whose parents had a certain amount of money when they were growing up, they might advance in society to like the next bracket above that, but even that is extremely difficult.
Yeah. I actually managed to probably move down a couple brackets from mine, but
Well, yeah, like you're kind of the exception to the rule because
Mhm.
you can tell what somebody's income level, lifetime income is going to be. Um, the most accurate predictor of that is somebody's zip code,
Hmm.
like where you grew up. You will fall into this range of income in your lifetime. And yeah,
Mhm.
and as I moved away from conservatism and like the whole idea of free will and personal choice and liberty, and started questioning that, and that turns out to not be a thing. Like the only conscious decision we might be able to affect is whether or not we label something as good or bad. You know, like
Mhm.
whether we give it a 1 or a 0, but that's it. And as in that, like that gets put into the whole like algorithm that becomes our next day or next week. And
Yeah. Hmm.
I feel like
Yeah.
they're like, I feel like the free will is probably just being born recently, and what we thought was that choices wasn't. But now we're kind of growing in awareness as you're kind of able to
Hmm.
observe yourself. That observing of yourself
Hmm.
kind of is like a step up in
Yeah.
conscious development.
Yeah. And I think we could do a whole episode on the idea of free will and like the various things. But yeah, I think the way I've heard it described, because like I said, it's one of those things where I'm not convinced that it doesn't exist. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not convinced that free will doesn't exist. I'm just not convinced that it does. That's kind of just where I'm at.
Yeah,
Because
and if it does exist,
yeah,
I'm thinking it's tiny, like it's smaller than we thought.
yeah.
Whatever its influence is.
Yeah, one way I've heard it explained, I don't remember who it was. It might have been Sam Harris because he talks about it a lot, or it might have been someone else. Might have been you. Who knows? But described it as what we think is free will is just all the processes that are going on that within our minds that we're aware of, and we
Yeah,
think that just because we're aware of whatever decisions like internally are going on, like within the computer or whatever, we think we're making those decisions for some reason, but
yeah, it just percolated up to our next
mhm, yeah,
level of awareness.
yeah, because yeah, what you mean? I could get going on that for a while, so maybe we should not. Like,
Yeah, so all that like consciousness stuff actually kind of helped me move more. Like I would say I'm a leftist now. Like I'm not progressive, yes, but uh, it's hard to
mhm,
describe because I've been watching that guy Greg Stoker that I like to watch
yeah,
for
mhm,
geopolitical and military kind of analysis. He is a veteran, but he's also he shared, I think yesterday, that he's a Black Flag anarchist,
mm,
and he's pretty sure he's being monitored.
probably.
Because yeah, what he's doing now is basically what he used to do in the military, but
Uh,
he's using it for political, like intelligence and analysis and making strategic moves. And so
yeah, using his evil powers for good.
yeah, um, and so
Appreciate people like that.
that's why I find the whole thing real interesting, because like his angle is like it's gonna take some chaos to get things. It's like shaking the boggle cubes, you know,
Uh,
like you
mhm,
shake them, and for things things for them to get like resituated, you got to shake it first. And so he's like an
mhm,
accelerationist, which means like let's speed this process up and get it over faster. Uh,
mhm,
so that's why you see a lot of those tactics where they try to provoke a response from the other side.
mm,
And the reason why they do that is because you can't provoke what isn't there.
yeah, mhm,
And so
true.
they're trying to draw it out, get it on camera, get people to see like which of these do I agree with, like yeah. So that and the idea of consciousness and like how like consciousness is, if it's like a thing and not just a creation of our biology, then there's got to be a web of consciousness, like people linked together into other things. And is the energy that makes up the universe a form of consciousness, and then everything is both here and not here.
Wish it would make up its mind where it is.
So that gave me the idea that like nobody has any clue really what's happening right now. It's like scientifically, we got the tip of the iceberg, and so anybody's guess is as good as anybody else's what this is all about. So, kind of democratically, let's combine all that. Where do most of us think this is going, and then start preparing for that instead of like which part of the past do we want to keep it at? Like that's impossible. Stop.
Yeah.
Like isn't progressive what we want to be? Like don't we? Well, progressive means like that's where things are going. That's where progress is moving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And let's evaluate where it's going and how are we going to address where it's going.
Yeah, and this could be, and maybe this is like a whole other kind of direction to explore on this as well. Just how like different political leanings are connected with different thoughts on religion. Because again, this is very much a generalization, but people who tend to be more fundamentally religious also tend to be more like right wing. You could say fundamental politically as well. It's just apparently just how their brains work and how they view things,
and more easily manipulated by people in charge.
Right. But I think specifically when you look at, speaking of science, how the more like fundamentalist religious people view things like evolution, or just the fact that the universe is like however many billions of years old and like everything is like been like changing so much. But most religions, like in their fundamental sense, it's like, no, things were created the way they are, and this is how things work, and people are just people like this, they don't. Because when you talk about being progressive, if you actually look at least from what we can tell, like the way organisms or really just the universe itself works is like it's progression, like constantly, like things are always changing.
Yeah.
So it's like that should be the way things. Well, I don't know if you can really say should. I don't know if that has any place in it necessarily, but that's just the way things work. So it's more like just going with that flow. But like, yeah. But also recognizing it's, again, this is like just to me like a whole new, like with my whole new like way of looking at things in the past few years, is like that balance of recognizing when it's good to go with the flow, but then also recognizing when we have the power to actually change the flow. Like, because maybe where it's going isn't where we want it to go, but because of how we've evolved. Again, like, so it's like the way we've gone with the flow through evolution has enabled us to not go with the flow in certain ways, which is kind of paradoxical, but kind of cool. So
I was thinking yesterday about,
that's good.
So as humans developed, right, and when we were more in the animal world of survival, there was always another threat, right? But then at some point in our development, the only real threat to us, a consistent threat, was people, we thought. And so I kind of wonder if that idea that there is always a threat to your immediate survival that was baked into us, like it starts to backfire for survival once you become by far the dominant species on a planet, because then the only real enemies or real threats you could have are other people, and your whole like physiology has been like trained to need an enemy. And so I really wonder if seeing people as bad and potential enemies is why we have all the strife that we have. Like we've kind of, how we thought it was is how we made it. um, like labeling people as either good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like there's two camps. There's like the camp that says people are generally evil, left to their own devices, or people are generally good, left to their own devices. And if you believe that if this idea is what survives and through evolution, that humanity is inherently evil and bad, then we will kill ourselves eventually. Like it's going to be kind of like a subconscious thing where like humanity just eats itself and destroys itself because it has this idea that like humanity it isn't worth having around. Like if humanity is evil, then why is it good for it to be around? It's like, well, but they could be redeemed. Like, and that makes them fundamentally okay again. Like, well, no, they still have like the inherent badness, because of creation and Adam and Eve, and you can't just all of a sudden be a new creation like the Bible says. So round and round. But I kind of think there's something to that, because if we move from everything being a threat to like we change the idea from the idea is to survive, and move that to the idea is to help other people survive, and you do that as much as you can. Like it gets a little complicated when people aren't going to. When people are going to kind of be vultures in return and just kind of like take as much as they can get from you.
Yeah.
Then you got to be a little bit more judicial with your resources. But I think we can give people our time and our effort, like as much as possible. And then for people who like we know are on a similar wavelength and they're not going to use your generosity to hurt you, which you can really only figure out after trying it. Be generous and see what happens.
Yeah.
We like shift our mentality to giving instead of taking.
Yeah.
And then we don't need money anymore eventually, or capitalism.
Yeah. Because speaking of capitalism, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. Just that, like what you were saying, it's kind of like shifting your mindset. Because like people can make the argument that capitalism was maybe like necessary for like the success that we're seeing as a country, or like in other countries, because like people will point to
it was
because people will point to like this is an argument I've heard, and contrary to how I used to think of myself, I'm not actually like knowledgeable enough to really speak on like a lot of economic matters, like when it comes to different systems and what actually works better for what situations. Like I'm by no means an expert on any of that, like I said, as much as I maybe thought I was previously. like something I like to say is like, I'd just like to apologize for anything I may have said while I was drunk and or conservative. So
remember Motor Pub
or evangelical. What's that? Oh,
Motor Pub.
Yeah.
When you were like, you looked real irate about something conservative, and you didn't really notice because you were drunk, and I like tried to point it out, and you were like, "I'm fine." And it was like clearly.
Yeah, I do remember that, but yeah, I think I remember what we were talking about, but anyway, but yeah, so capitalism, and how it was maybe necessary for like different advancements and like successes that we've seen, because like people will point to like the more socialist like Scandinavian countries, like your Norways, your Denmarks, and Swedens and all that, and say, well, look at like how successful they are, but they're like more socialist than we are, at least in some ways, which is kind of weird. But then people
they
make
nationalized their like fossil fuel industry, and made everybody rich.
Yeah, who knew? But it's like but then like the capitalist side, they'll make the argument, well, yeah, but they only got that way because before they turned socialist, they were actually more capitalists, and that kind of made them wealthy. So it's like the whole like they could, I guess maybe the way people view like being more like green or like having more environmental technology is like your society kind of has to get to a certain point before they can feasibly actually like do
Yeah.
anything. It's like while you're just in like survival mode, it's like you don't really give a shit about how much you're polluting because you're just trying to eat, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
I think this is probably a natural progression that happens on every planet that
Mm,
has like a survival of the fittest structure.
yeah, yeah. So the way I look at it now is like, okay, so like I said, I'm not knowledgeable enough or nearly enough of an expert to say either way, but I'll just grant that okay, capitalism was needed to get us to like a certain level of success.
Doesn't mean it was good. It just is the natural
Right, or
progression.
didn't mean
Yeah.
we didn't do a lot of really shitty stuff on the way, but like, okay, we're here now.
It was
Like,
just step 2. It's just what happened.
and the people were step 3 and 4, but 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 kind of going back to our conversation about Daniel Dennett and how he viewed religion, or not just him, but I think he just had a specifically like good example, like referring to religion as like a nurse crop, meaning okay, at some point in human development, having religion, I mean, obviously that was, I guess you could say, a necessary thing because we did it. It's because determinism and all that. So that was just part of how we were wired at some point in our history. That like that's just something we needed, and maybe for a lot of people that was what kind of helped bring them along, like to get to certain levels when it came to like whether it was like morality or forming community and expanding beyond just a very like small tribalist mindset and like to thinking bigger. Like, yeah, sure, maybe that was needed, but he's like, but we've outgrown it. Like, so
Yeah, I think we've outgrown believing it's real or factual.
Hmm.
But I think there's a lot of insight about life in there if you look at it as like a
mhm.
parable for life, or if you're looking for like wisdom, I think that's still in there. But the wisdom can come doesn't have to come in the form of instruction. It can come in the form of just a story that helps
Right.
give shape to a particular idea or
Mhm.
point of view that you hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah,
that's my perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, for sure. Like the way I like to think of it is like people like is a phrase maybe popularized by Christopher Hitchens is how like religion poisons everything, and so people like heard that, and like I haven't read his book like that was like the subheading to. I've heard him talk a lot about it, but and I'm not sure if this wasn't even necessarily his point or that he would even say this. Like people will hear that and they'll just hear like, oh, you're saying there's no benefit to religion at all. There's nothing good about it. Like it's just bad. It's like for me, it's like, no, that's at least when I refer to it that way, like as being like poisonous or whatever. To me, the poison of religion is not that there's no good in it. To me, the poison of religion is the idea that that's the only source of that good and that you can't get it without it. Because
Yeah.
we talked about on here all the times. Like if people are religious or have any kind of faith and that's actually like genuinely helping them in their life, then okay, great. Especially if like to the point of like that's literally the reason you're still alive and like with us right now, then yeah, great. I'm glad you have that. But just the idea of I think I don't remember if we actually talked about this on an episode or if it was like after or before, but I remember something you said. It's like one thing to be like offering someone a rope like to like help rescue them out of something. But it's another thing to say like, no, this is the only rope. Like you can't grab any other ropes. So
Don't even try. Don't even test him.
yeah,
Just trust me. This is the only one that works.
yeah. Kiffany with a good point. Yeah, religion is man's attempt to get to God on their terms.
So I've been. Yeah, all right. So I'm warming up to the idea that religion is humanity's like attempt at like a creative observation of something else that's going on. Like, so it seems like there are like almost definitely other dimensions. Everything is, I don't know if they've made that discovery at the collider yet that would indicate for sure there's other dimensions, but all of the math so far is lining up for that to work. So like that's probably the outcome of the research. They won't know for sure until it happens or not.
Right.
I'm kind of wondering if it's like the way that ideas will kind of like survive or thrive based on their circumstances and the cultures that they happen within, and how it seems like if a particular idea is more suited for survival, it will survive better than other ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost kind of like an organism. Like it tries to survive, like it
Mm-hmm.
and
All right. Just get another beer. Be right
so
back.
it seems like there's like almost like another ecosystem in the idea realm. And even if that's only taking place in people's brains, and even if it's only biological, that's still kind of like a higher dimension. And so I feel like religion was kind of this like different cultures trying to put shape to like this higher human experience, and then being certain that's what it was.
Yeah, I think that's maybe where the trouble kind of crept in.
So, because there's all right, Lou Elizondo's book got leaked. At least the first 4 chapters got leaked onto Google Books, and it seems like this book was. I'm getting to my point. It seems like this book was his threat that he's making good on.
Ooh.
And it seemed like the threat was to the defense industrial complex and all that. Dick. DIC. The defense industrial complex.
Bunch of dicks. Yeah. Don't be a dick.
It seemed like he kind of gave them an ultimatum. He's like, okay, you can tell them, or I will. And I released this book that I've been working on for ever since. I think he's been working on this book ever since he left ATIP, and he left that program when it was obvious that they had no intention of telling the American people about any of it. And so he left. And then through Freedom of Information requests and whatever the Defense's media release approval bureau is, whatever that's called, little by little, he's getting different components like okayed to be released. All right. And so he compiles those into a book. And I think there was probably a dead man switch on the book's release also.
What is that?
Meaning if he dies or disappears, the publisher will release it no matter what. And he probably had some kind of agreement where like they would be massively sued if they reneged on that. And so it was released, and he was talking about stuff and went in detail about which just those within the just part of those 4 chapters. He went into like detail about which of the non-human entities were involved in this particular thing that happened off the coast of, I think, Brazil. And it was just like clearly he didn't get all this information cleared together, because it is it's compelling and true, and there is something that like something that sparked religion in people that was caused by something. that is real and scientific. And that's kind of what one of the aspects of that was in those chapters. And
interesting.
Yeah. It just seems in my brain. It just seems like everything is moving closer to this isn't real. Like this both is real and is not real. If you zoom in,
that's a good way to describe reality, I think.
If you zoom in, like subatomic quantum level, right? Eventually, shit just starts popping out into existence. Like there's nothing there, and then all of a sudden there is something, but that something is really just like a particular structure of energy. And if you zoom in on that, eventually there's nothing there, and so like everything is kind of a hologram of, or like a projection of physics. Like this is what physics looks like when it's doing this. Like, is that real? Yeah. I don't
know. Yeah.
Like this is the theory of everything is going to be a physics formula that connects, I think, gravity with light. I don't remember. Gravity was the missing piece. They can't link that yet to all the other basic physics formulas. But when they can, there will be like one algorithmic formula that is the way things are. And this is just what happens when that formula is that formula.
Yeah. Well, I guess just that formula. Like, well, I guess there's your God, everybody.
It's like an executing program. Like it.
Man.
And maybe that theory of everything, that one formula.
Yeah, the big toe.
Yeah, that's the mathematical representation of a white hole. Like that's what happens at the end of a black hole. Is like it's the physics of wherever the black hole came from condensed it down, and maybe the constants shift a little bit so everything still works. Like the rest of the math still works, but the constants are different.
That's made there's something nice, like almost like kind of heartwarming. They're like, oh, we're bringing the black holes and the white holes together. It seems like there's something there. Yeah.
Yeah. No such thing as good or bad. There's just a spectrum between two opposites.
Yep.
But the bad thinks they're good, and the other side is bad. The good guys think they're good, the other side's bad.
Yeah.
Who's right?
Yeah, because it's not just... Yeah, because that's the thing about like spectrums. They're not just linear. They can also be kind of circular. Which, going back to like the whole politics thing, why I said like libertarianism is kind of a short trip to anywhere, because like I said, people think of the political spectrum as just a line, but it's really more like a grid kind of thing. So like anywhere is pretty close to anywhere else. So yeah.
Yeah. And like, was it the left and right both meet at authoritarianism? It's just called different things, depending on.
Yeah,
it's either a fascist government or it's a communist authoritarian government, and they treat their people the same way.
It was one of my favorite representations of the political quadrants, I guess, in that format. It was talking about. I wish I could remember all four, but I can only remember three, because I remember there was the authoritarian right was about, or maybe it was like the basically more like right wing was like the right to bear arms, having guns, but then like the more left wing was more like the right
to have bear arms.
Like no, I'll get to that. But the right, but then like the left was something more about just like bear arms, like being more like like hippie like. But then my favorite was the anarchists, the right to arm bears. It had a bear with an AK or something.
No, that was okay. If you had like a private hunting preserve, and there were bears there, and they had these harnesses on them that had AI machine guns.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
And so then the bears are just maybe bullets would really spook the bears. Maybe that wouldn't be great.
Yeah.
Maybe it's I don't know, plasma weapons or some shit.
That just means the bears got to toughen up.
But like,
Stop being a bunch of wusses.
if you're trying to hunt the bear and the bear's trying to get away, but their backpack is trying to kill you, that's a new extreme sport.
Oh.
Be like
I
the
have no
Hunger,
interest in participating with, but I will watch the pay-per-views.
yeah,
So.
that sounds like a Hunger Games kind of situation.
All right.
Save the planet, or the planet could save itself.
Go Bears. All right. All right. But so, well, first I want to say, like, thank you to Kiffany for leaving this comment a while ago to bring us back on track. So, decapitalism. So speaking of the whole,
Yeah, it needs greed to work.
like things being necessary and like have we outgrown it, or because this is actually tying several things together, both like things we've already talked about and things I want to talk about.
Boom.
So,
boom.
Because like, so again, not being super knowledgeable or any kind of expert in economic systems or anything like that. So I'm willing to just go ahead and grant to the people saying so that, okay, capitalism was necessary to get us where we're at. Okay, fine. Now that we're here, now this goes back to the whole mindset of progression versus just being static, like this is the way things are. I think that's the problem with the more like fundamentalist mindset is, okay, we found a good thing, this is the good thing, this is what we got to stick with, we can't move away from the thing because we've already established it's good, so therefore it is the good.
Anybody who threatens it or is different is bad.
Yeah, so again, not recognizing the fact that no things change, because like, so when I think about, okay, then so you look at countries like, the Scandinavian countries we were talking about, where people say, well, before they were more capitalist and that's how they got so successful that now they can be socialist. Okay, well, if that's how it works, then okay, cool. Can we do that, please? Because like we're fucking there. Can we do the actually like taking care of people shit instead of still, because it's like we're just still stuck in that like survivalist mindset, which maybe for that like capitalism was good to kind of like tap into that greed, like, and just put it in a system where greed can lead to development. Again, not saying a bunch of shitty things don't happen to people along the way to kind of get, because the wheels of capitalism crush a lot of people under them.
Yeah, I really think that was. So, have you seen? I want to say it's called Mortal Engines. It's by the same guy who, I think it's by the same guy who did. I don't know for sure. I was going to say I thought it was by the same guy who did Sucker Punch, but I think he's the DC director guy for the dark superhero movies. Anyway, I forget what I was saying. What did I start talking about?
Well, now I forgot too. We're talking about like capitalism and the wheels crushing the people, and
yeah. I got sidetracked with wheels crushing people because they're in that movie. There's cities on wheels, and it's basically like a metaphor for capitalism and all that. Capitalism / fascism, I think. But
I see.
Now I got distracted.
See,
one of the goals.
Tiffany knows Mortal Engines.
Yeah, I thought so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Part of the idea of capitalism is for richer people to get the poorer people to turn against the even poorer people and blame them for their problems. And
because how dare they want stuff too?
And here's the thing. At any given time, there's a certain amount of money in circulation. Like there's just a certain amount of wealth that is possible to be had in a country at a certain time. And so if a lot of people don't have it, that means fewer people have it. Like that wealth is locked up somewhere. And at the top, they're just using wealth to get more wealth. It's like they can't even use what they have. It's all about control. And capitalism only works basically if the people without the money get a little greedy, and then they're driven to keep getting more, and they
Yeah.
can't really get the more. It's limited.
Right.
That's
Mhm.
by design.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, so it's basically, so here's the irony that I found with, going back to like Scandinavian, like more socialist countries. So that, and I've seen like people who do such types of like research and reports and surveys or whatever, and like talking about like, well, which countries are more economically free and like that kind of thing. So all these countries like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, that people talk about as being like more socialist, but like according to like the experts who've actually analyzed it, economically they're actually freer than we are here in the United States.
Yeah, they have that kind of democratic socialism where
Mhm.
the people have decided. The
Yeah,
people
so
have
it's
decided like how they want their economy to be structured, and
Mhm.
go figure. That's why it's kind of a mix of two seeming opposites.
Yeah. So it's like, so it's almost like they're paying more in taxes. So like the government is providing more services, but when it comes to like them just like going through their day-to-day lives and operating, they're actually freer than we are. So it's almost like over here, we got like the worst of both worlds. It's like the government is controlling more, but they're helping less. you know.
Well,
So,
they're not helping the population. They're helping
yeah.
themselves and people with big pockets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, so that's why. So there've been, like I said, there've been a few things, like several things, maybe a few and several were very different things in my head that I felt like I needed to make that distinction right there. Welcome to my head. And that sounded dirty. But again,
Well, not until he said that.
so again, welcome to my head. This is what it's like. Well, there's no salvaging this, so I'm just going to keep plowing through. So
that's what she said.
Well, she's doing the plowing. Not going to complain.
Well, no, not necessarily. She's doing the plowing.
No, but she's consenting to the plowing. Is that
right?
Right.
Right. She's just this railway ain't gonna hoe itself.
and this hoe ain't going to row itself. I don't know what that means either, but it was in my brain. So.
Sounds like a position called crossing the Delaware. Did he have a spyglass in that painting? Because I wanted to say I don't know what that position is, but I think it involves a spyglass.
Well, I'm sure it does. If any ladies in the crowd would like to enlighten me at some point, I'm free this weekend.
That I'm going to change the subject. That painting
anyway
was a very Jesus on the boat during the storm kind of image. Because everybody else in the boat is like, trying to fucking row, and George Washington's like, I will walk on the fucking water.
It's like you're all just here for the optics. Yeah,
you're all here to vouch for my awesomeness.
Now stop rowing. We're being painted. You got to hold still. Like, but so yeah, I don't even remember what the fuck I was talking about, but I think I had some. Okay, it was
greed and capitalism. And...
yeah, we were talking about like Scandinavian countries getting to where we're in. Okay, so there were several things that kind of started bringing me, at least in a practical sense, like out of like the whole like anarchist mindset. Like I said, still definitely like anarchist at heart, because I think like still like the principles of voluntarism, and like I think it's one thing to say that people should do a thing. It's another thing to say that other people have the authority to force them to do the thing. Like, I think that's,
or to not do it,
Yeah.
punish if you do.
hmm But
Interesting that the police carry out the will of the state and not the will of the people. There's like a
yeah.
disconnect there.
Well, because in theory, the will of the state is supposed to be the will of the people, but that kind of stopped being the case.
Yeah.
At least, I mean that. I mean, you can make the argument that here in the U.S. it was maybe the case for a certain period of time, but like I don't think you can really argue that anymore. And certainly throughout human history,
Yeah, the
got some
the
tough sledding there.
the Western police model, at least especially the United States version, and this is mostly how it is across the world, but the United States version of policing came from anti-slave insurgency forces in the Caribbean.
Mm.
And so, and the sheriff's shield that like all the sheriffs have, that multiple star thing, that's based on the anti-slave insurgency badges. That the whole idea of a badge in this part of the world originated from there. And ever since then, police departments and forces have been trained as an anti-insurgency force. And who's the insurgency? The general population. They're like always on the lookout for people trying to get away with shit. And so there's like this anti-insurgency mindset. Like the people are going to rise up, and it's our job to keep that from happening and enforce the laws.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with that whole model, like their job is not to prevent crime at all. Their job is to arrest people when a crime has been committed. Their job is punishment. And when you have a punishment model, like you can't use that to prevent crime. It doesn't work. People do the crimes because it's worth risking the punishment.
Yeah.
And so like that, which means at least they think they're desperate. I mean, that's their mindset, is utter scarcity. I have to take it because I'm not going to get it.
Yeah. Right. It's also where we get the saying like that I love. It's like punishable by fine means legal for a price.
Yeah.
And it's only a crime for the poor. So,
do you know how many jails in the United States are full of people who just can't pay their bail? And so like they're in jail for like sometimes up to a year waiting for their trial date.
Yeah.
And that their only real crime at that point that's keeping them in jail is that they're too poor to pay bail. And or they don't have good enough credit or whatever it takes to get a bail bondsman. Somebody pays your bail for you. No, it's gross. My sister works at a jail and she's like, it's stupid.
Yeah.
And she's like, and some people's parents, like they'll find out like that prisoner will call somebody in their family to try to get bail, and like that person will call back in the office, and my sister will answer, and they'll be like, oh, I heard my boy so and so was in jail, and like, yeah, do you want to pay his bail? And she's like, nah, keep him. Like, that's terrible.
Yeah. I mean, unless they really are like an actual like danger to society, and they're like, no, please. But
no, sometimes it's that, but it's usually trying to teach them a lesson, tough love, and which is a conservative kind of viewpoint. And maybe the tough love is how that guy got into the mindset that.
Yeah, because a lot of the people who say things, well, my parents did this like horrible thing to me and I turned out fine. Like a lot of the times, like, you did not, in fact, turn out fine.
The rest of us can see it.
Yeah.
Sorry to break it to you.
Yeah. So
and if we didn't, now we are seeing that you think that's okay and that's a problem. So now we're seeing that you do have a problem.
Right. So, yeah. And so. But yeah, but that whole idea of like the tough love, it's like, well, they need to suffer for whatever, and that's
that would work though if when actual physical survival was not a guarantee, like tough love would be helpful, because it's
Right.
like, well, this is at least better than being mauled by a tiger.
Right. Which, again, this goes back to the whole like people not recognizing that, mindsets like need to shift with the current situation. Like they find, well, this worked for me, so this must be the thing that works for everybody. And if it doesn't work for you, that means there's just something wrong with you. But yes, but going back to the whole like whether capitalism was necessary to get us this point, which again, just granting that sure it was. But now that we're at this point, it should be okay to like reevaluate and say, okay, is this really what we need to continue doing? Can we change? Because to me, like I said, talk about the whole like being in like survival mode. Like, I mean, think about it. It's like if you're in like survival mode, like thinking like going back to like, our more like hunter gatherer phase of humanity, it's like, because there's like a different mindset of like when it's the time, okay, you're running low on food and it's like winter and like things are scarce and you're having to go out and hunt and like gather and like all this stuff. So that's one mindset you got to be in, which is helpful to be in that mindset at the time. But once you got enough stuff and like you bring it back home to like your family and your community and everything, it's like you don't need to be in that mindset anymore because you already got the stuff, But real quick, just appreciate you, Tiffany, for hanging out.
I appreciate you too. Thank you.
Yes, and also like let me know if you still plan on running this fall. Yeah, I if you ever want to share your platform again, that was you had some good ideas when we chatted about that. So hashtag Tiffany 2024, make it happen. but yeah, good night. Oh, and congratulations on the new house as well. Hopefully that all goes smoothly for you. Yeah, she's going to be moving to Arizona. So, yeah. If anyone knows Tiffany and like some of her like backstory, like that's a huge deal for them. And so really happy for you. Happy that all worked out. So anyway, but yeah, just to me, it's like, okay, we're at the point now. It's like, okay, we have enough, like as a country, when it comes to like wealth and like resources and everything. Like we don't need to be in that mindset of I need to get mine, like survival.
Yeah. We need to redistribute.
Right. So that, because a lot of people have a problem with that because they're like, well, I had to work hard for what I got, so everyone else should too. It's like,
and then you're like, right, we're not talking about taking your money. We're talking about taking the people who have more than they can use.
Yeah, because people say like everyone needs to work hard for like having stuff. And it's like, okay, but here's the thing. What if they actually don't? What if we can just give it to them? This is one of the things that,
and the research does lean in that direction for that being like, if give it to them with, like, you can't give somebody a car without also like helping them understand how to take care of it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like that works better than, yeah, it just works better to give people stuff instead of giving them something and like, but you can only spend it on this. Mm-hmm. Because then you become dependent. Speaking from personal experience, then you become dependent on the timetable, at the very least, the timetable of state support, and you're like, well, I can't budget for like the next 4 months because I'm waiting to hear like how much food assistance I'm going to get. And I won't know until they decide to tell me. And so, but if they just gave people money instead of saying, here's money, but you can only use it on these things, only certain kinds of food, which is pretty much everything that we buy. There's nothing on the list that we get on a regular basis. I mean, you can't put alcohol on it, which makes sense, or cigarettes. That makes sense too. But it would just be better and more cost effective for the government to just say, here's the money that we have decided you're entitled to have as a person who lives in the United States at your income level. And and then don't try to find fraud beyond like the little entry level part,
Mhm.
because like the amount they spend on trying to root out fraud and prosecute it costs them more than the fraud cost them.
Right. Hmm. Yeah, but yeah, because some people just, because I used to have this mindset myself, so I'm speaking from experience. Like people just have this mindset of, well, we can't just let people have stuff. But like,
Okay,
and
what
first
kind
of
of
all,
stuff? Like,
well,
you know what I mean? Like, you can't just say we can't let them have stuff. No, maybe we just can't
I
let
mean,
people just have
we can't.
certain things.
No, I mean, we can't just give them stuff for free, like without them working for it and earning it or whatever. Now, most of these people who say this, they're usually themselves, at least in some sense, pretty well off, and they don't realize maybe how much they were given, whether or not they were actually given like literal things, or whether it was just they were given opportunities.
Or they just started further
Yeah.
along in the race, kind of thing.
Yeah, because that's one of the ways like a lot of the people will push back, and when you talk about like privilege or whatever, they'll say like, well, I don't have privilege. I had to work hard for what I had. It's like, we're not saying you didn't have to work hard. We're just saying that whether it's like your skin color or other aspects of your life, like those were not obstacles to you getting to where you are. So it's more like, yes, we all work hard, or at least most of us, but it's just the fact of the matter is, for some of us, that hard work pays off more than it does for others, because of whatever situation you find yourself in, whether it's your skin color, your socioeconomic status that you grew up in, your zip code, as we talked about before, your connections.
If you're working
like that,
in certain levels of, if you've got a warehouse job or somewhere where you're one of the grunts, like you're not working in the office, you're one of the grunts. There is a limit to the benefit that working hard can attain for you. Like, you become one of the most productive workers, but they're never going to promote you to management, or because you're too good at that. You're too good at what you're already doing. Or they're like, clearly they can't be in management. They look like a warehouse worker, and they'll never not look like a warehouse worker because maybe they're built stocky and sturdy, and or in the case of like native Mexicans or Guatemalans, that tend to be smaller. Especially native Mexicans tend to be like more rotund compared to European frame, and like people just don't see them as somebody who, they don't look like they're somebody who is in charge of things.
Yeah.
That's just dumb, because nobody's getting a roof put on these days unless those guys are doing it, basically.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's who put on my roof. So, yeah.
And the guys who run those crews, they gotta. Can you imagine having a rotating crew? Like, somebody, they speak your language, but they might be from a completely different country, and there's no really shared culture thing. And just to get that all organized and put a roof up in like 5 hours.
Yeah.
Like, that's impressive. Like, that was a tangent.
A little bit, but that's all right. It was good. So, what were we tangenting off of? Oh yeah, just the idea of, like, just as a country, like how like we got enough for everybody. Like we have more than enough for everyone here, and that and then some. We can definitely afford to help out others outside of our borders as well, I think. But and so this is one of the things that kind of was pushing me kind of like out of the more like libertarian anarchist, at least in a practical sense, like kind of mindset. Because one of the mantras you'll hear from that camp, and even like the conservatives, really, the more Christian types, and like they'll say more specifically like the churches, but people say like, well, it's not up to the government, it's up to us to like take care of ourselves. And like I said, going back to a more like voluntarist
Yeah, but
mindset.
can't we use the government to do that?
Yeah, but here's the thing is, okay, you can say, well, it's up to us. We should be the ones doing it. Okay, but here's the thing: we're not. Like, we're just not. At least not doing enough. And sure, you can make the arguments in certain cases that it's because of certain like government restrictions and regulations that are it's kind of inhibiting some people. Like you'll see the stories about like people are arrested for like handing out food like in the park to like homeless people because they don't have the right permits for food distribution. Okay, yeah, shit like that. Yeah, that's bullshit. But like how like are you telling me that's the reason, like the only reason that more people aren't helping out? Is like how many churches like are having their people like getting arrested for handing out food to homeless people? Like not as many as they would like you to think it is. But so that to me is like okay, having your principles is one thing, but when it comes to how are people like actually doing? How are they actually being affected? I go say, okay, yeah, I don't like the idea of like the government forcing me by, taking my money and giving it to other people. Like, okay, yeah, sure. In principle, I'm against that. But if that's the only way that these people are going to be able to survive,
yeah,
then
yeah, if it's that or famine, then I think everybody can like make it. Then I think it makes more sense of the idea of like taking money through taxation, even if the people don't want to give that. Like if it's that or those people can't survive, like maybe screw your preferences,
Yeah, because here's the thing: like you could say, okay, yes, you shouldn't force people to do things that they don't want, like with their own money, their own property. Like, so if people don't want to give like their money to like help other people, then you shouldn't force them. But at the same time, but why would you not want to? So it's like, are they the asshole for forcing you to do it, or are you the asshole for not wanting to do it without being forced?
Yeah. I don't know why that reminded me. It kind of like the whole idea of forcing things, and there's going to be a big action in DC tomorrow because Netanyahu's in town, and he's going to be going from wherever he's staying to the White House, or not to the White House, to the Capitol building, because he's going to speak at a joint session of Congress. And this is the only time in America's history that a perpetrator of a genocide, which was just recognized as a genocide by the ICJ, or the IJC, whatever, that one. It's the criminal court of the UN.
Yeah.
And while it is non-binding, it will have drastic implications because you can lose your spot in the UN if you don't. So there's a limit to what you can send to a country that is actively perpetrating a genocide. And if you do that, you can lose your seat on like a particular council at the UN, which is more valuable to you, like the higher committee you're on. Yeah, so it's a really big deal. It's been hardly reported in the US at all because money reasons. They hide things that will be unpopular, either cost them advertising money or donation money.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a massive protest in DC tomorrow. The uniform, if you are a civilian, is a red shirt, and I think the chant they're going to be chanting as much as possible is "We are the red line," because there's always that talk of where's the red line, like where's the red line that like Netanyahu can't cross, and so they're going to be making lines against roads and blocking movement in DC, and the veterans who are going to be taking place, they're going to be wearing fatigues on the top and jeans on the bottom to show obvious veteran support for this. It's going to be it's probably going to be pretty intense. Counter protesters are going to show up, and the protesters are expecting that, and they have their own security. And those are the veterans and people trained by the veterans.
That's good to be prepared.
Yeah. Nonviolent resistance is the whole thing. So they will be in the way until forced to be out of the way. And you'll probably notice that any violence that started is started by the police or the counter protesters. Because that's the whole plan. That Greg Stoker guy's going to live stream.
Oh, cool.
His deal. So he'll be in potentially the thick of it. He's a special forces vet and a Black Flag anarchist. So he's just going to fuck shit up.
Oh, man.
But he won't videotape himself doing any crimes. So that'll be interesting to see, like, how an intelligence officer provokes somebody to attack them without really doing anything at all to them other than words.
Oh, words. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, that's going to be something.
It's kind of like Hitler coming to town.
Ironically enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Well, that may lose us some audience members, but yeah.
Well, I mean, it is a genocide. It just is. I mean, you can argue that whether or not you think it's justified, and that's a terrible discussion to have. But like, it is a genocide. Like, it just is. Like, it meets the definition. But I think Kamala's probably going to back us out of that involvement.
Well, that'd be good. So speaking of like our current political situation, so just one more thing I wanted to say to kind of like as far as like my steps kind of like away from anarchism, like, so going back to the whole like how like the more like socialist Scandinavian countries like have more like higher taxes and more like government actually doing shit for people, but like being more free. Now, here's something I've recently come to as far as what I think, again, not being an expert, but what I think policy-wise is a good way to move forward. And I know like all my like anarchist friends are probably going to have a heart attack at this, but the specific policy that I've become the biggest fan of is UBI, the Universal Basic Income.
Yep. It's going to be a necessity very soon.
Because here's the thing. Because I think if you are really not a fan of like all the government regulation and all the things they're having to do as far as like economic freedom, even if you don't think it's ideal, I think still this should be very appealing to you, because a lot of the regulations we have in place are because people don't have enough money. When things like the minimum wage, like those kind of regulations, things like other things different employers have to provide, with, you know, all kinds of things like things. But if you just have like everyone, and I don't know what the number would be, like how much it is that you give everybody, but to me, it seems like if you have UBI, like you wouldn't really even need to worry about necessarily things like minimum wage. Because like part of it is like, if everyone already has like the UBI, it's like, well, you kind of have to pay people a lot, or not necessarily a lot, but you have to pay them better. Otherwise they're going to like, well, I should even work for you. I'm getting UBI, and like, I'll go work for someone else who's actually going to pay me more. You know, they have a little more freedom to be a little choosier with, like, at least ideally. Like, again, I'm not, like I said, not an expert. I don't know how this would actually play out, but to me, this seems like at least a start in the way to go. So, because for me, it's like, again, like going back to, like, because we have the money, we have the resources, like we have the wealth to be able to split. So let's just start there. And then from there figure out, okay, in addition to this, okay, what do we need to do as far as like regulations and making sure like people have enough or whatever. Like just start there and say like, okay, we got tons of money. Who wants some? And then
and as things get more automated, making money, I mean, automated like voice chat AI stuff or like in manufacturing, it suddenly becomes much cheaper to make a lot of money. And because once you just have like the initial like startup of building everything in the factory, then you're just maintaining it, and maintaining a machine is cheaper than paying and maintaining the people through benefits and health insurance and stuff. And so there's going to be an excess of capital, and it's already started.
Right.
So it doesn't make any sense that like our whole country worked towards producing the higher end technology. Like everything below supports things above it. And so even if it's not directly supporting, just being in this country and working, like you're contributing to you're contributing to the development. So then like should people at the top only be the ones that like get the benefit from that? And universal basic income is just it just makes a lot more sense because you already have if you're starting from a living wage, or at least the government pays you the equivalent of that to balance it out, then anything that you make beyond that is just more for you to keep. Whereas the way it is now is the way it is for us is we get a certain amount of assistance, but if I make more than a certain amount per month, like over a period of time, then my income gets bumped up into the next bracket. And because everything is fucking bracketed instead of a sliding percentage scale, then it's like, we suddenly lose $500 a month or some shit. You know, like it's quite a bit when that's a big chunk of your budget because you don't have a lot of money. And so now, then you're incentivized to make money without it being official, and just because otherwise, it's like if you make too much money, you end up with less money overall.
Right. Yeah, that was kind of a thing. Like, so where my son still goes to school, but like where both my kids went, it's a private school, but like their tuition is on like a sliding scale based on your income, which is the only reason we can afford to send them there. But yeah, there were a couple times where like when it, like we were like pretty close to the line, so like we were doing the math. It's like I was up for like a promotion at work. I was like, am I going to lose money by getting this promotion, kind of thing.
Yeah. But as long as if it's a sliding scale where it's not brackets, you know, it's not categories.
No, but it is brackets. It was brackets though. So yeah.
Why not just say why can't you have it be a spectrum where it just balances to whatever the difference is? That's what they cover.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, at least we're still in one of the lower brackets, which but yeah.
Yeah, we did get a bump up in our food money.
Oh, cool.
We weren't expecting, and that's the other thing. The math is always changing. It's not like there's not a formula that you can see and predict in advance. It's often fluctuating based on what changes they're making to the regulations on their end.
Yeah. All right. Well. Only because I promised one of our viewers we would get to this eventually, but unless there was anything you wanted to like touch on like just in general, like kind of things we're talking about, like if you wanted to get to more like specifically about like the kind of current election, because there's been some things.
Yeah, with the current thing, Trump is too old. I think he has dementia. I don't like, on top of really not liking his politics and thinking that he's a dangerous parasite.
A bit.
For the first time, we have an election where the choice really is between democracy and fascism. Like up until now, that's always been the projection. Like each
Yeah.
side is like they're doing this and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But now we're finally at the point where like that dream has become a reality.
Right. Yeah.
And
It's been a case of, I mean, unfortunately, it's been a case of like, the boy who cried wolf. It's like it's really been like the media who's cried most important election ever.
yeah,
It's like, can
now
you imagine? Like, I'm just thinking back to the days when it was like Obama versus McCain or Obama versus Romney, and like all the things that people were saying about those two and how terrible they were. Like compared to like what we actually have now, or at least the
yeah,
potential of what we actually have now, it's like,
it's kind of a question
uh,
of like, is this the closest to fascism we're ever going to get? And this is where we take a more left turn because that's what the younger generation wants, and that's what
hmm,
most of the country wants is something not
yeah,
Republican. Um,
yep.
so is this that turning point, or do we need to go through like an actual period of real fascism in charge before we make that left turn?
Mm.
Uh,
I mean, I hope we don't need
normally,
that, but
normally the fascism thing would last for years. But everything's moving so quickly now. Like this might just be as far as it gets. And
hmm, yeah,
like, has America been scared straight, to use an unfortunate?
yeah. I still can't believe we use straight for that,
Well, it's an old
but anyway.
term,
So yeah,
upright and
yeah.
proper and all that.
Yeah, but real quick, I'm just going to throw out like a link here in the chat. So if there's anyone else who like, as we're talking about like the current events and whatnot, and if you have your thoughts and input, like, 'cause I know we got someone in the audience who's a big Bobby Kennedy fan. So whether you actually want to jump on or if you just want to like keep contributing in the chat,
So the
or like
Bobby
anyone
Kennedy
else,
thing,
yeah, let's talk about him since we promised we would.
I did like some of the things that he said early on, right? Um,
So what was that like? I honestly like.
he was kind of libertarian, kind of common sensey. Uh, he would say things like, "I'm not sure. I will research that, and I will have an answer." And
No, that's refreshing.
yeah, somebody would ask a really specific question, and he would say, like, in general about that topic, I think this, but about that specifically, I don't know enough about that to weigh in, but I want to be able to, so I'm gonna learn about that. And so I found that refreshing.
Yeah, yeah.
But then when it became so, all third party candidates have no hope of winning, at least unless the system is significantly changed.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately.
when a third party candidate stays in it past a certain point, then it starts to be really obvious they're in it for themselves. Like they're trying to get more speaking deals, book deals, a position on the winner's cabinet or in their administration in some way, or they're willing to take donations to some foundation that they oversee or something in order or for staying in the race. Like depending on what side Bobby Kennedy would probably take votes away from, that other side is going to fund his campaign to cannibalize those votes. So just after a certain point, like it's a selfish decision to stay in. I think it's important to move the needle, and when it's important to have third party candidates that people can protest vote, but that really only
Yeah.
has the effect of then showing the parties what they're going to have to adopt if they want those voters. And
Yeah.
so third party candidates can kind of steer the conversation, the future conversation, but they really have no hope of being president until the party system is reworked in our country.
Yeah.
So he started to look a little selfish to me, or a lot selfish, when that video got out of him talking to Trump, and Trump was kind of like trying to get him to stay in, to help. No, he wasn't trying to get him to stay in because Bobby would probably take votes from Republicans more than Democrats. So,
yeah.
so Trump is kind of like he said, "Oh, maybe I'll give you a position," or he was just blowing smoke and shit. And he was clear. Kennedy was clearly entertaining the idea, and the video of the conversation, because it's on speakerphone, and so the video of that conversation was leaked by his son, which
By
means
whose son?
Kennedy's son,
Yeah.
which meant son is disappointed in dad and is leaking something to be like, no, I'm not gonna let you get away with that. That's bullshit. It's like you can't tell these people that you were serious about running and then like you stay in only long enough to get your position on somebody else's cabinet or in their administration. Like that's really hypocritical. So
Yeah.
I disliked him. I think he should have been Trump's VP, or Trump probably should have chosen Katie what's her nuts from Georgia. Remember the kitchen table lady?
I didn't actually see her deal. I just remember people talking about her, but yeah, that's part of my whole like recovering, I guess you could say recovering anarchist thing is like I still don't really keep up with a lot of like current political events like very well. Like basically Matt's been like my main source of like the political goings on, but so and just what I see people posting about on Facebook or whatever. But
there was a rep that the Trump could have added as his VP that would have been better for him with his party, but he chose JD Vance, who has enormous money ties to tech bros like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. So he was the money choice, but
yeah. Now our friend of the show, Derek Day, had an interesting theory on why Vance was chosen as his VP, and he said, "Well, it's because if you take like all the old like Trump Pence gear, you have to change fewer letters." But
I think JD gets him well, overnight. He got him like 100 million basically, and Elon. Anyway,
now I didn't see exactly when this comment came in and BlackRock. So if you want to like comment again to let me know exactly.
No, BlackRock controls all kinds of shit. They're a venture capitalist firm, and they. If it's a pie worth having your fingers in, they're in it. They're one of the venture capital firms that kind of runs the world.
Well, that's nice of them.
Not really because they're trying to, just that's how much influence they have.
Yeah. But speaking of our buddy
JD Vance also gets the white supremacist vote.
Well, you got to have that.
He made a quip about Kamala Harris getting a government check.
Okay. So I was in the JD Vance conversation. All right. Thanks, Brittany. Appreciate you.
No, he's such a tool, and he can't edge a beard for his life. He's got that like instead of following his jawline, it kind of like follows his second chin. And
I would say I'm not one for like criticizing people's like beard scaping or whatever because I just let it just do its thing. But
you committed to like where the angle changes, right?
No,
that makes sense.
Well, this is like committing / just not doing a damn thing with it and just letting it just.
Right, but there's a logic.
This is just what it is.
So I like to have mine kind of follow my jaw, then it goes under a little bit, and I think that looks better. And then so he kind of does that back here, but then it like drops down, and so it takes instead of framing his face, so he's got a round face and hardly any chin without a beard, and so he has shaped his beard to highlight his roundness.
That's one. It's bold strategy, Cotton.
Like, what are you doing? It just looks like your face has a buzz cut. It just looks like somebody put your head on upside down.
Yes, accurate. But yeah, But speaking of our buddy Derek Day, like I think I mentioned this maybe last week or the week before, but I swear I'm actually going to read this blog post of his that I keep talking about as if I've read it, but I still haven't. But I just remember the point he made about third parties and why they at least currently don't have a chance, which is unfortunate, but it's because like you have to start at the like local level,
Mhm.
like build up like your support. You can't just enter like this well-established two-party system and then just like throw in a guy for president like at the top level and expect to have any sort of like ground support for it, because like you got to start local. But
I've seen
because
Green Party has been doing that a lot more than I've seen anything else. Like Socialist Democratic Party, I haven't seen them doing that anywhere around here.
yeah, I mean like libertarians, like they've like done maybe some stuff at some local levels, but it's, I mean, but so as much as I would love to like to get to that point eventually, like, but that's where it's got to start. Like, we're not going to start a third party by electing one for president. Like, that's just not how it's going to work.
Well, we would also have to change the electoral college system, either get rid of it or change. Like, what do you do if no one gets the 270 electoral votes? Because with 3 candidates, that's possible. There'd have to be some there. We would need the mechanism for a runoff election or a like general election primary, not the party primary, but like a primary that like whittles down the candidates from all the parties. That's how they did it in France, I think.
Interesting.
Something like that.
Yeah,
they're all about coalition governments in the Europe.
But yeah, but when it comes to like third parties for president, like I said, I mean, I did vote third party back in 2016, but that was, like I said, I had no expectations that Johnson was actually going to win. It was really, to me, it was really more just like the protest vote, like that, that approach. Because at that point, like I said, I just severely did not want Trump or Hillary. Yeah. But I maybe underestimated how awful Trump was going to be. I guess my impression of him, and I think I mentioned this before, but like pretty much until the end, like especially like with the whole like January 6th stuff and all that, like my impression was with Trump was like he was more like buffoon than actually evil. He was just like, it's like for most of his presidency, I was like, I don't really see him like actually doing anything terrible. He's like saying a lot of terrible things, but
he did a lot of prep work for Project 2025 when he was in there before. Like the more dramatic, harmful stuff was under the radar. Like that whole thing of him being able to appoint all these like hundreds of party loyalists or Trump loyalists into the different agencies. The mechanism to be able to do that was put in place when he was in office before. It was like a particular executive order he put in place, or it was part of a some kind of package they put together. So yeah, I think he's the far right's useful idiot for sure, especially now with his cognitive issues getting worse.
Yeah, because and again, like to whatever degree I can like psychoanalyze someone else who I don't even know. Like, but my impression with Trump is, so going back to like the assassination attempt and like his reaction to it and like how he like, you know, after initially like ducking down and then I guess like the Secret Service or like immediately took the shooter out and they like told Trump like while he was on the ground, okay, shooter's down.
Yeah.
Now at that point, how they could be so confident that, okay, yeah, that shooter was down, but like that they knew like, okay, threat completely eliminated. Like, but apparently it's one point that, okay, shooter's down. We're good. We're just going to get you out of here. Let's go. But then Trump like gets up and is pumping his fist and saying like, fight. And so like admittedly, that was like pretty badass looking.
Yeah.
Like Like that was like you just think like just as a human being to like be able to recover like, oh, I was almost killed, but I'm just gonna get up and like be like, yeah, I'm still here, like just on like a very human level. Like I get that,
Yeah.
that's
Well, and it
but
shows how naturally a showman he is.
yeah, because so for people but the way obviously a lot of like his like supporters like treated that was like, oh, he's so brave, and they said like, oh, even after like having his life threatened, like he's like a rich guy, he could just retire, but like he's still coming back to fight for his country, and it's like that's bravery, that's commitment. Like to me, like that says that's an ego.
Yeah, no, he stays out of prison. If he becomes president, he can pardon himself, and he will not have to go to jail. He can't pardon himself for the state crimes, but for the federal crimes, he can.
Mm-hmm.
And so this
Yeah,
is this is literally his get out of jail free card. Like, not literally,
Yeah.
but it's his literal get out of jail free.
Yeah, but yeah, so
that seems a little selfish.
yeah, there's that. But yeah, so now one of the things I'd planned on talking about like tonight or like whenever it is we got to our episode where we talk more politics, because we've been talking about this for a while, how we eventually would be wanting to do an episode like this. So going into it, when the thought was, okay, it's Biden or Trump, and it's like, as much as we thought tickets couldn't get any worse before, like now it's like, so I was going to just like talk about like my strategy for like how I'm going to vote. Because the thing is, like, especially like when it was like between like Trump or Biden, I was like, okay, like let's be real, like I'm a straight white dude, like so for me, honestly, like no matter who wins, probably not much would really change for me. Because I also I don't really like make enough money for whatever the tax situation is to really matter that much, things like that. So I was thinking of like basically just like putting it out there. It's like for all my friends or whoever who don't fit like all the demographics that I do, that are like some of the most like privileged things ever, like just putting out there, like, how do you want me to vote? Not necessarily like just completely putting my vote up to a vote, essentially, but I mean, now because also in a way, like I could tell, like for all the people who don't fit those demographics, what direction they would be wanting me to vote. But I think now even more so that it's not so much that it is Harris, but just more that it's not Biden anymore. It's like I think I'm definitely leaning more like I may end up voting Democrat for the first time in my life, at least for president.
Yeah.
I've probably voted Democrat on more like local stuff before, but yeah.
I voted for Biden last time.
Oh.
Yeah. That was weird.
Yeah, I think the last election I was still like very much my anarchist phase, so I just didn't vote.
Yeah, it was. I didn't really want Biden to be president, but like I didn't want Trump more. So,
yeah,
this time, Kamala Harris does have more progressive viewpoints. She did want to speak out about what Israel was doing with the Palestinians, and
yeah. There you go.
The Biden staff edited her speech. She was to say ceasefire for 6 weeks or 6 days or whatever. Like originally she was going to call for a flat out ceasefire and such, but they made her change her speech, and you could tell when she delivered her speech, she said she called for a ceasefire and then she paused, gave kind of like a little defiant look, and then said the rest of it. So it was obvious that that's what she wanted to say. And by her tone of voice, she was saying for a week or whatever that's what she was being made to say. So yeah, she's a former prosecutor. really harsh on drug charges and all that stuff. So not ideal,
No.
but a much better chance that our democracy survives if she's president versus Trump. Now, I am pretty damn positive there's going to be violent protests no matter who wins, because somebody's either going to be emboldened or somebody's going to be super scared and threatened, and that's going to be the same side. So we're talking either emboldened or just way the hell backed into a corner and threatened, because Trump was their last guy. Like, the reason why they're so into him is because he either turns the corner for them or they're done. Like, I really think they feel like it's Trump or nothing. Like, if Trump doesn't get in, life as they want it to be is done. At least having any kind of hope of winning an election again. Unless they change their... No, but I if Trump loses this, some of his violent supporters are going to lose it. And they're going to probably end up being like the worst advertising campaign for the Republican Party. And so whoever loses this election is going to be weakened for years, I think.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. But
Yay.
yeah, we gotta do some anarchy stuff where we're somebody just messaged me.
Wasn't me.
Yeah, it was Aaron.
This time.
What was I gonna say? Oh, I think we need to be more anarchist in our regular lives. Like,
Oh yeah.
give things away, like barter more things. I thought I had my phone on silent.
Fuck the system, man. Well, I didn't hear anything. So
Okay. Good.
or maybe my hearing's just going. That could be a thing too.
So opt out of the system, basically. So no matter how this goes, opt out of the system as much as possible, or rely on one another. Like, does your neighbor have chickens? They have too many eggs if they do.
Yes, as a former chicken owner, I know. Yeah, that's...
They'll give them away.
We did.
Farming co-ops, like, get your beef or your whatever from like a farm co-op where you own part of it, and you get great stuff, and it's at least as cheap as the store. It's often cheaper over time. And then you've got independent stuff. You don't have to be like if you know somebody who can help you learn how to change your spark plugs or do things on your house, or any kind of barter a little bit. You know, what do you have a surplus of that somebody else has a deficit? Yeah. And that way, we need a system less. So it matters less if it gets kooky for a minute.
Right. But in the meantime, again, like, as much as, like I said, this is kind of a dirty word in like some circles I used to run in, slash
run in like it was Sharks versus Jets.
Slash, these were like some people like typed some things out on the internet, but so when it comes to like the whole like voting third party, and as much as I like in principle, agree with like a lot of the sentiments behind it, but like I said, it's almost like just like instead of trying to like build your base, from ground up at the local level, like just throwing out a person like for the presidential election, it's almost like that's like too little too late kind of thing. Cause like, and I know this is said, like this has been said during like so many elections, like, okay, but this one candidate is so bad that like, yeah, we have to vote for this other guy if we don't like him just to keep this guy out. Okay. Like,
really?
Okay, but like now that's kind of actually is the case, maybe like
Yep.
more than it's ever been. So
We're either at the inflection point or the hiccup before the inflection point.
yeah, so the way I look at the whole like voting third party out of protest or whatever, or like thinking that like, okay, ideally this person, even if there was like a third party candidate that I absolutely believed in and thought this was the guy or the gal or whoever, like if, and I know like this mindset is like, well, as long as people don't think they have a chance, then they'll never will have a chance. They won't have a chance until we think they do. But like at some point, like you just gotta like cut bait on something. It's like looking at a situation where something might escalate to where okay, the use of violence for like self-preservation or whatever is necessary. Okay, but now before that, obviously you don't think violence is the ideal. You think the ideal is being able to like talk it out with the person or de-escalate or whatever. But when it comes to a point where it's like, okay, even though this isn't the ideal, nonviolent means aren't going to get it done this time. Just for self-preservation, I'm going to like, do what I need to survive. And then hopefully for next time we can work things out. Like to me, that's what I said, like throwing out like the third party candidate, like just for a presidential election. It's like, okay, like I said, it's too little too late. Like that's not going to me voting for whether it's Bobby Kennedy or whoever else is like out there. Like, because I'll be honest, like for me, like keeping Trump out of the White House, like that's like priority one right now. Like, and voting third party is not going to get that done this time. Now, it would have been great if enough work to get up to this point had been done to make that a feasible reality. But that work has not been done to this point. So that is not a feasible option to me.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, like I'm not telling other people they shouldn't vote third party because like people say, well, that's just throwing your vote away. I still maintain the only way to throw away your vote is to vote for someone you don't is to vote against your conscience. If your conscience is to vote Bobby Kennedy or whoever else is running out there, whether it's like Green Party, Socialist Party, Libertarian Party, whoever, like I cannot tell you you're throwing away your vote if you're voting your conscience and who you actually believe in. But
my personal preference would be if you're in a swing state, don't vote third party. Not this one.
Yeah, that's another thing I was wanting to talk about. Yeah.
But at the same time, if your conscience is really like, well, I heard somebody their opinion was the Democrats won't change their platform until they start losing elections, like enough elections. So, in their viewpoint, voting third party, even if it does put Trump in office, that still has a positive outcome because if enough people voted third party, then the Democrats see that like they have to adopt those principles or they keep losing.
Now, the cynical side of me says the people saying this are probably straight white dudes because they're not the ones whose necks are on the line if Trump does get in. And in the meantime, things are really shitty.
Well, they're an accelerationist, so that means that their goal is to do things that get us where we're going faster. So there's something to that. But then do we know that actually helps it get where it's going, or does that steer where it's going?
Yeah.
You have to keep it nonviolent because the U.S. is like one of the rare instances. It might be the exception to the rule where a revolution didn't bring on a more oppressive regime. Other places like Cuba, like that revolution seemed awesome, and then they ended up with oppression of a different kind. They just traded oppressions.
Yep.
Now, a lot of that oppression is the U.S.'s fault because of the embargo that we helped spearhead against their country that just keeps them poor for fucking ever. And
Yeah, and which brings to like something we didn't really get to tonight.
Actually,
I
it
mean,
kept them and Puerto Rico poor because Puerto Rico was
right?
super fucking close to Cuba,
Hmm.
but because they're a U.S. territory, they can't do business with Cuba, and do they have a do they get that say in anything? Puerto Rico? No, they have a representative who can come and listen, like in Congress. They're a
Hmm.
territory. They have no direct representation. They're a colony, basically, of the
Yeah,
U.S.
which I mean, and what's more American than that to say like we'll let anyone come and listen to us.
And
But
they were made a territory against their will. They were never asked. Wonder why they don't get representation in Congress.
yeah, fuck. Yeah, because so here's the thing, like, and this is something we didn't really get into tonight, and like this could be a whole another thing, but it's like something I just at least just want to touch on real quick is like so just recognizing, and this is also a part like a big thing that kept me more like libertarian anarchist, like just against like the whole thing is like because like a lot of our conversation tonight about like both of the candidates or like which direction is going, it's all about like which direction like this country is going like for us. But when it comes to
Mhm.
like the US's foreign policy, we've been doing horrible shit like pretty much no matter which party is in office.
We've been a colonizing
So
empire for ever since World War II.
yeah, so on that level, when someone says, I just can't in good conscience vote for either party, like no matter who the candidate is, knowing what we're going to do foreign policy wise,
Mm-hmm.
I totally get that because I'm like, I've been there myself and still
Yeah.
kind of am
Yeah, I get that.
So 'cause it's like, I think there was this, this was back in the 2016 election when it was between Trump and Clinton. Um, Someone posted, I don't know what platform it was. I just saw a screenshot of it. Someone saying it was like, if you're like, basically saying like, if you're voting third party at this point, then you're just admitting you're like a privileged asshole. And so you're just willing to let like Trump win and you don't care what happens to anyone else. And then it got a response from a woman, I don't know where exactly, but like living in a Middle Eastern country. Because the original poster, I believe they're a white female. And so like someone responded to that, like from the Middle East saying like, oh, I wish I was a privileged like white person from your country. So like they didn't have to worry about like whose country's Clinton's bombs were going to drop on. Because basically the point of the original post was we need to elect Clinton, but like not realizing like, because here's the thing, like of all the, and I think I've said this before, but like of all the issues I have with Trump, and there are a lot, one thing I truly do appreciate about like his presidency was he was the only president, at least like since Carter, who did not start any new military conflicts.
Yeah, Clinton would have started a war somewhere.
Yeah, so I just, to me that post like and that response was just like such a good like kind of reality check moment. It's like just think bigger picture, like beyond ourselves. It's like because everyone talks of like because Trump is again because of more of like how his like rhetoric and policies or whatever affect us directly. Like it's a bit more of like an obvious case of like how terrible he is. But like if you're someone like who's, I guess you could say like a victim of our foreign policy, it's like it almost doesn't matter who's in office. Like they all like it's because it's put forward like this choice of like whether you're voting for Biden or for Harris or for potentially like Clinton back in the day, like when she was running. It's almost like this person's the good guy because they're not Trump. It's like, well,
Yeah.
even if they're not Trump, they're still doing horrible things to everyone else.
Yeah.
So
And-
I totally get like the people who say I just cannot in good conscience participate in this at all. Like I get that. And
Yeah.
and I can't call, it's not like I can call either of them good.
No. I realized
But,
that I could help move the needle.
mhm.
You know, I could help
Yeah,
shift
that
the
it,
scales
yeah,
in
that
a direction, even though like the intermediate steps, like Harris is probably gonna be, since she's further left, she has her cop background, so but she's a Dem, so I'm thinking she will probably be more defense focused than like offensive action focused. But she still has that kind of like law enforcement background, and so there might be some tendency to be the world police.
Yeah.
But we can't anymore, and that's why the U.S. has pulled out of
Right.
so many places, and why we're doing proxy war stuff, and
Mhm.
we're now advocating like de-escalation for like all parties involved. Like even their own response against the Houthis, it's just like this tit for tat thing back and forth. You know, like they're both Houthis and the U.S. are both doing things to keep their people happy or their allies happy. Neither one's really trying to escalate, but also neither one can stop attacking the other because there's too much momentum behind there. So like I get somebody wanting to just like opt out and not want to participate in something that causes harm. And at the same time, like there's a lot of momentum behind where things are now. We just can't turn things on a dime. Like we're gonna drift for a bit.
Yeah.
It's gonna look like we're still going in that one direction.
Right. Yeah. So I guess where I'm at now is, like you said, it's all about, I mean, at this point, like I said, at this point in the game, like, yes, it would have been great to have a better option, like going back that actually had a chance. But where we are right now, like you said, it's not like there's really a choice that is actually fantastic. And like you said, it's all about moving the needle. But my thing is, like, I think too many people just have the idea is like, oh, well, I'm just voting for not Trump. Therefore, like, the person I'm voting for is like, this is the good choice. Like, just because it's not Trump. It's like, well, yeah, it's better because it's not Trump, but that doesn't mean it's actually good. It's like,
yeah.
So, because I heard this all the time from like people who are more on the left. It's like, well, yeah, I'm going to vote for Biden this time, but rest assured, I'm going to hold his feet to the fire and like all the issues I have with him. But like, at least, and maybe people have, but at least honestly, from what I've seen, like from people who said like, I'll be holding his feet to the fire. I haven't seen shit, if I'm honest. So like,
No.
It's almost people just said, "Oh, at least we got Trump out. Now we can relax." Like, no, you fucking can't.
No, because that Project 2025, that is the plan for the next Republican president. Like, as long as that what they're working on keeps selling, like as long as their base wants that, like they'll just change the number. It'll be Project 2029. If they don't win this one, like it's not going away. We need to utterly reject it until the generation that is keeping that going starts to age out of the population. Like this is going away on its own. It's just in the meantime, the idea is really scrambling. And
so this is probably going to be completely pointless, but I feel the need to say it anyway. So first of all, if there is anyone watching us still at this point, but particularly if there are any conservative Christians watching still at this point, because I know for so many Christians, like they would even like proudly call themselves single issue voters, like when it came to the whole like abortion thing. And they say, well, that's why we got to keep voting Republicans because we got to get Roe v. Wade overturned. It's like, okay, you got it. It's been overturned. You don't have to vote Republican anymore. Like, you're free. As shitty as that is, the mechanism by which you're free now. But
we could pass an amendment on the Constitution as a country, and like there is a way around the Supreme Court.
No, I'm trying to convince these people not to vote Republican anymore.
Okay.
Stop being honest.
Maybe if we told people that, like, if you're trying to save the life of the unborn baby in your point of view, like you can't pass a law that favors like one half of that duo that is a pregnant person and the baby. Like you can't save one without it inevitably being at the expense of the other. Like
Yeah.
So there are times where, like, for the woman to live, if there's like a pregnancy complication, they have to terminate the pregnancy, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
if you make abortion completely illegal, which is what is happening in some states, then you can't you you're saying I'm willing for the mother, the pregnant person, to die in order to save the baby. Like if you're pro-life in quotes, then that's what you're saying is like,
Yeah.
and and we don't know, and nobody knows if any pregnancy is going to carry to full term at any point.
Right.
Like there are so many pregnancies that the body terminates itself, and like
Hmm.
the what's it called, zygote, is that what it
Hmm.
is?
Yeah.
Like there's like so many zygotes that just get menstruated out and like
Yeah.
basically aborted by the body or by God. And so you're saying you can save the mother's life because the baby might have lived. What? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't make any sense. And
Yeah.
it's like, how about we just say this is a really unusual circumstance where we have a person or a potential person inside another person. How about we just let them decide?
Yeah. Good. This is like another topic I was kind of anticipating us getting onto tonight was like the whole abortion issue, but I mean, we've been going kind of long and I really have to pee, so I don't want to get on this too much, but all I'll say is like you just said, it's a very unique situation. It's like people who try to like formulate their opinions, and I've seen this like on either side. Like they'll try to compare it to other situations somehow. It's like no, this is a unique situation. So, like you said, leave it up to the people involved, which is not you for the most
Yeah.
part. But when it comes to
And there's no
policies,
biblical basis for it at all.
yeah, like if
So,
anything, there's a
so
biblical
Christians,
basis.
please stop talking about that.
Yeah, if anything, there's a biblical base for abortion because if anything, not only does the Old Testament actually, in one instance, give instructions for how to perform an abortion as a like check, like because it was this like
Yeah,
I think it was something like to prove like whether this was like the husband's baby or not. Like give this
oh
woman
yeah,
this
yeah.
like thing, and if it kills the baby, then it wasn't the husband's baby because that's how biology works.
Convenient that
Like
because
poison only kills illegitimate children. Like,
well, okay, so it was like one of
but
those like 50-50 poisons. Like it could go either way. And it definitely had
yeah.
nothing to do with like the physical fitness or the immune system of the mother.
Right. But the other thing is like in like the Hebrew tradition, like in the Bible, like the standard was life is in the breath. And a person does not become a living person until they take their first breath, which means after being born.
Yeah, there's another one where life
So
is in the blood, which and so like that still doesn't put that still makes abortion okay past a certain point. Because up to a certain point, like the fetus doesn't have its own blood; it's just the
mhm,
mother's blood
yeah.
circulating.
Yeah, and the pro life crowd will they'll often quote that verse like how it says that we were knit together in our mother's womb, like as if that somehow means that they were a person just because they were being knitted. It's like ask anyone who's ever knit a sweater. Like once they start knitting, is it a sweater now? Like no, it's just a fucking bunch of yarn. It's not a sweater yet until I have made it. Yeah,
You could
but
even argue it was never a sweater; it was always yarn.
ooh, yeah. Mariological nihilism for the win. It wasn't even yarn. but yeah, but all I'll say, and the only other thing I want to say on that
It's
is
kind of like
if
I'm not a person; I'm a Matt starter kit.
uh
I'm the sum
yeah.
of my parts.
If that. But I'm just the parts of my sums. But the only other thing I want to say on that is like if you're really interested in preserving the life of the unborn, the best way to make sure that they're taken care of is to make sure that their parents are taken care of. If you want that baby born, give it a safe environment to be born into.
Mm-hmm.
or at least do what you can to give it a safe environment. But still, at the end of the day, leave it up to the people whose business it actually is, which is not fucking yours.
Also, go figure, organisms, when they feel less desperate, will feel less eager to reproduce because they're not going extinct in their mind.
Mm.
Like, the more desperate somebody feels, like, the more they're going to screw around because their monkey brain is like, threat is on the horizon. We better repopulate starting now.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's a thing. Yeah.
I just thought of that. No, and it is true. Like the better off someone is financially, the less they. Also, weirdly, extramarital sex is like an all-time low in recent history, and it probably has something to do with the acceptance of pornography. Like,
it does help.
Yeah, because you don't need to go do the real thing because, like. So if you're like, no, don't do anything, if you're, super conservative, then guess what? They're going to be even more desperate for the real thing. Especially because, like, you didn't really see that in your future, Like, you're like, I'm a good conservative, like, Christian kid. And then you go on that date and you're like, well, wait, hello.
Right. But yeah, I mean, that is the thing. I mean, demographically speaking, I mean, the wealthy tend to have like fewer kids than the less wealthy. So,
yep. They also get attached to their kids earlier. Because if you're in a poor society, parents don't really start bonding with their kids until they're past the age of easy death. Like,
interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, like I said before, I certainly don't have to pee any less than I did a bit ago. But any other, I feel like we could keep on going like for hours and hours on this. Because this used to be like pretty much all we talked about whenever we got together. It was just like talking politics. And so it's kind of nice to do it again, but very different than those conversations used to go.
We knew so much then.
We did. The scotch helps.
Yeah.
That's still one of the things I appreciate about you the most was one night we were hanging out. I think we were at Nicholson's, which is a Scottish bar here in Cincinnati. And I knew it, like, this was definitely back. I think this was in like the peak of my like tea party days. But we were hanging out with people, and like I had several. I don't remember what I was talking about. I just remember you saying to me, "He's like, have you had enough to drink? Your opinions are getting louder."
And you know what? Also at Nicholson's one time, there was that time where like I started talking about the Nazis in positive terms. But it was like their industriousness and we were there with your cousin's fiance, the German guy. And yeah, and I don't know if it was you or someone else. They were like, I don't think you are catching what you're saying. And I was like, I know exactly what I'm saying, which made it all worse. Because I really didn't get what they were talking about. I was just like, I was just picturing. For some reason, I was picturing Tomorrowland. But like in the German Tomorrowland, like the German World War II version of Tomorrowland, where like it was spectacular, evil, but I respected the spectacularness of it all. And then, because in my mind, I was completely separating it from the awfulness. This was like a parallel universe version where like they weren't great, but they weren't this universe's version.
Yeah, it's the blessing and curse of compartmentalization.
Yeah, and creative thinking.
Yeah,
it's like no, everything that's happening here is a satire.
Right? Yeah, Matt is not a Nazi. Everybody, it's okay.
Yeah.
Not and he neither is he in favor of any Nazism type things.
No.
So
That's why it was so terrible and humorous. What I did in the
Yeah.
past. That was another like too much scotch.
yeah. Yeah. All right. Well,
when your daughter was when your wife was in labor with your daughter, we decided there wasn't enough scotch, and so then we went to go get more.
well, because also it turned out she wasn't in like serious labor at the time. That was just like
Right, it was very early, right?
Yeah, I think it was at least like another day or two before like she was actually born. But
it's still a really funny memory.
That was. It's like, hey,
We're
my
like-
wife might be starting to give birth. We should go get scotch.
We were just like, "You're cool, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Yeah, she was a good sport about it.
We're like, "Right, to the giant scotch aisle."
Anyway, I actually have some. I may need to get into that as soon as we're off of here. Speaking of which,
Yep,
Right,
let's go.
yeah. All right. Well, Benny those dicks.
May your things and stuff be forever with your people.
Yes, and vote or not. I don't know.
Do what you want. Vote, don't vote, but do it because that's what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, sure, it's better if what you want is what I also want, but no pressure. All right. Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just go do your best impression of a good person.
As good as you can, as little fascism as possible. We'd appreciate it. All right. We'll see you next week. Have a good night, everybody. And a good week and a good several nights or days. Good things. Until next time and beyond next time, even. I'm feeling like I just need to cover all the bases right now. So I should probably stop and go to sleep or something. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.